Now, I don't know who needs to hear this, but all these guys in S tier need to be started in each and every single league. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, and Drake London don't have great matchups. Courtland Sutton does. But these are your studs. It's week 8. We got tons of teams on buys, so let's get into it. Going into A tier, I want to talk about Rome Odunze versus Baltimore. It's a juicy matchup. Obviously, we want Lamar Jackson to suit up, so this game is super competitive and makes Rome Odunze very viable. Chris Olave's been on a hot streak, so we're throwing him back out there. A.J. Brown versus the New York Giants. This is a juicy matchup for A.J. Brown. The Giants have been competitive in a lot of games, beating the Philadelphia Eagles just 2 weeks ago, so A.J. Brown should be in your lineups. Zay Flowers, I kind of hit on it already. We want Lamar back. That boosts Zay Flowers into A tier. If Lamar's not back, you'll see him be adjusted. And if you want to check out my rankings as they update, click the link in my bio. I've also got my rest of season rankings there too. Then we have Michael Pittman versus the Titans. Wonderful matchup. You do have to hope that a lot of the points come through the air, not on the ground, because Jonathan Taylor is going to go crazy against the Titans. And then Nico Collins, he got a concussion on Monday Night Football, so he will be in concussion protocol. Just keep that in mind. And then going into B tier, I kick it off with DK Metcalf versus the Green Bay Packers. He was on my trade away video, so if you haven't checked that out, go ahead, come over to the channel and check it out. I do expect a decent week this week for DK Metcalf. I do expect a decent game for DK Metcalf because it is the revenge game for Aaron Rodgers. With countless teams on bye, he's in play. Going over to the Chargers wide receivers, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston. They play the Minnesota Vikings. Now, this has historically been a tough matchup for wide receivers, but the Chargers are also throwing it 40 times a game. That's the most in the NFL. And with Carson Wentz still at quarterback, we could see this be a competitive Thursday Night Football game. Tedoroa McMillan comes in next. Now, he could be down this list just a little bit. Again, it's a tier. You can move the players around as much as you feel comfortable with. It is against the Buffalo Bills. It is Andy Dalton that's most likely going to be starting at quarterback. The Bills are favored in this game. So let's hope that Andy Dalton goes to the better player, which is Tedoroa McMillan over Xavier Legette, which we'll talk about him a little bit later. Now, B tier is kind of small. If you wanted to add this next guy into it, I'm okay with that as well. But Devonta Smith, again, juicy matchup versus the Giants. So we shouldn't just copy and paste what he did last week onto this week. The matchup is great, but again, temper your expectations. And T. Higgins, we saw that Joe Flacco was getting it to Jamar Chase a lot, but also made T. Higgins relevant once again. Now, the Miami Dolphins have been absolutely horrible so far in the season. Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane have been like the two bright spots on the offense. I know he had a down week last week. He's still a little bit higher in the rankings than maybe you would expect, but he also does play the Atlanta Falcons, which is not a great matchup for wide receivers. I talked about the Chargers wide receivers already, so I'm not going to go into great length on Keenan Allen. I would play Ladd McConkey, then Quentin Johnston, and then Keenan Allen. It's been really difficult to figure out who's going to have a good game, who's going to have a bad game. Remember Ladd McConkey at the beginning of the season? Sometimes it's a roll of the dice. But somebody that hasn't been a roll of the dice has been Jordan Addison. As long as Carson Wentz has been in at quarterback, which is the only quarterback he's played with so far this season, Jordan Addison has been red hot. He gets to play the Chargers, and it just seems that he's always undervalued. Wan'Dale Robinson versus the Eagles. He's been absolutely awesome so far as long as Jackson Dart's been in at quarterback. He will have Darius Slayton most likely this week running alongside him, so it will be nice to see how they actually use both the wide receivers. And then if you want a consistent wide receiver for the Patriots, it has been Stephon Diggs over this past month. He's been the most consistent. Now, the big plays have been going to Kayshon Boutte. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Going on to Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel, the Commanders wide receivers, we have not seen them on the field for a while. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs is a good matchup because we know that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to put up points, but they are both questionable as of this recording. So they play on Monday Night Football. If for whatever reason they are still questionable or becoming a game time decision before Sunday, I would be moving off of them onto somebody that's in D tier or maybe even the upper echelon of E tier, just to avoid all risk. And we just talked about two guys that we don't know if they're going to suit up. We don't know if Ricky Pearsall is going to suit up. I have no indication as of right now. The practice reports have not been released, but this is where he would slot in, assuming that he plays. It is not a great matchup versus the Houston Texans. And Romeo Doubs has been the most consistent wide receiver these last 3 games for the Packers. He gets to play Pittsburgh. It's a beautiful matchup for wide receivers because they stop the run, but they let you throw it on them. And then Xavier Worthy. Now, everybody was hot and bothered for Rashee Rice coming back, and rightfully so. This was the first time we saw these two back on the field since Xavier Worthy's rookie season last season. Now it was 31-0. It's really hard to calculate how they would have used him had the game been close. And with Jaden Daniels not playing this week, I'm not sure that this game is going to be highly competitive either. And you already know it, there's a lot of teams on bye, so E tier is going to have a lot of players. So let's blitz through them. Troy Franklin versus Dallas, juicy matchup there. And I would just be playing the matchups. Like Matthew Golden has a good one. DJ Moore has a good one versus Baltimore. Meanwhile, Khalil Shakir against the Panthers doesn't have a great matchup, and the Bills are favored in that matchup too. Xavier Legette versus Buffalo. Now, Buffalo is favored in this game, and Xavier Legette was Andy Dalton's favorite target whenever he came in as quarterback. He's going to be the quarterback most likely. Kayshon Boutte, always a big play. Again, a lot of stash guys here, but if you need to throw somebody in for a big play, Kayshon Boutte is that, as well as Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce gets to play the Tennessee Titans. Juwan Jennings versus Houston is not a great matchup, and Raheed Shaheed versus Tampa could be good, especially if Tampa is going to be scoring points. And then the no-name fella there is Tez Johnson versus the Saints. I actually like him a lot. I mentioned him in my waiver wire video here this week. He could be all the way at the front of E tier if you really wanted him to be there. Again, all these guys are extremely close, and a lot of them are long shots to be something relevant. But an even further long shot to be relevant would be everybody else in F tier. I do like Eli Kyle-Manor versus the Colts. It is a nice matchup, as well as Marvin Mims versus Dallas. Again, Dallas, they can be beat on the ground and through the air. You'll see Xavier Hutchinson there as well next to Luther Burden. It could very well be Jalen Noel or Jaden Higgins if Nico Collins does not suit up. The more full-time role has been Xavier Hutchinson, so that's why I put him in here. He's obviously the safest. But if you want some juice, maybe a spark, then Jalen Noel is where I would go. Luther Burden versus the Ravens will be a very nice matchup as well. But again, we do want that game to be a little bit more competitive, so hopefully Lamar suits up because DeAndre Swift is probably going to have a great game too. And that's it for wide receivers this week. If you haven't already, go ahead and check out my running back video. I've also got a trade targets video, so go ahead and check that out as well. As always, if you want my rest of season rankings, they are in the link in my bio. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead, click the bell, turn on notifications. I do go live each and every single day, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.